A seed, scraped from the cavity of a fruit and discarded by the handful every autumn, contains more magnesium per gram than almonds. It delivers more zinc than most foods in the Western diet. It provides complete protein, dense calories, and fat stable enough to store for years without refrigeration. For thousands of years, the civilizations that first cultivated the plant understood that the seed was the prize. The flesh was secondary, sometimes ignored entirely. Today, billions of these seeds are thrown into compost heaps, garbage bins, and landfills every October. The seed did not become less nutritious. We simply forgot what it was for. There is a seed that most people have held in their hands. It is pale, flat, and oval, enclosed in a thin hull that cracks between the teeth. It emerges from the interior of a fruit so common, so deeply embedded in autumn rituals and holiday traditions, that the seed itself has become invisible. An afterthought, something to be scooped out and discarded on the way to the flesh beneath. And yet this seed, gram for gram, contains more magnesium than almonds. The comparison is not trivial. Almonds are marketed relentlessly as a health food, packaged in single servings, promoted in wellness articles, sold at premium prices in every grocery store in the developed world. They are positioned as nature's perfect snack, the benchmark against which other seeds and nuts are measured. This seed exceeds that benchmark by a significant margin. Modern nutritional analysis shows magnesium concentrations nearly double those found in almonds. The seed also delivers zinc in quantities that few common foods can match, a mineral essential for immune function, hormone regulation, and wound healing that most Western diets fail to provide adequately. It contains protein at concentrations approaching 30% of dry weight, with a complete amino acid profile. It provides iron, phosphorus, potassium, and fats predominantly unsaturated. In a small handful of seeds, scooped from a cavity most people treat as waste, lies one of the most nutrient-dense foods available without cultivation, without purchase, without any effort beyond the decision not to throw it away. For millennia, people understood this. And then, somewhere in the last few centuries, the understanding reversed. The flesh became the product, the seed became the waste. The seed did not change. The priorities did. The archaeological record begins in Mesoamerica. In the caves and rock shelters of Oaxaca, in what is now southern Mexico, researchers have recovered the preserved remains of cultivated plants dating back 8,000 years or more. Among them are the ancestors of this seed, fragments of rind, desiccated fibers, and the small, hard-shelled seeds that early cultivators saved, planted, and selected across generations. What the evidence reveals is unexpected. The earliest cultivated varieties of the parent plant were not fleshy, they were not sweet. The fruit was small, hard, and bitter, inedible by modern standards, unsuitable for the pies and soups that would define the plant's purpose thousands of years later. The early cultivators were not growing the plant for its flesh, they were growing it for its seeds. This distinction matters. For thousands of years across the civilizations that developed in Mesoamerica, the seed was the point. The fruit was a container, a biological package that protected the seeds through the growing season and delivered them, dry and ready for storage, at harvest time. The flesh, when it eventually became palatable through centuries of selective breeding, was a secondary benefit, a bonus, not the purpose. The Aztec Empire, which dominated central Mexico in the centuries before European contact, incorporated these seeds into their cuisine and their medicine. They were roasted, ground, and eaten whole. They were pressed for oil. They appeared in dishes that combined seeds with chilies, with tomatoes, with the complex layered sauces that would eventually become known as moles. The seeds were food, currency, and offering, present in markets, in temples, in the daily meals of farmers and nobles alike. The Maya, whose civilization preceded and overlapped with the Aztec, cultivated the same plants across the lowland jungles of the Yucatan and Guatemala. Seeds recovered from archaeological sites confirm their presence in household contexts, in storage vessels, in the refuse middens that reveal what people actually ate rather than what they claimed to value. Across North America, Indigenous peoples grew related varieties adapted to different climates, some for flesh, some for seeds, some for both. The seeds were dried for winter storage, a concentrated source of calories and protein that could sustain communities through months when fresh food was unavailable. They required no special preservation techniques. Dried thoroughly, they lasted for years. When European explorers arrived in the Americas, they encountered the plant and eventually carried it back across the Atlantic. It spread through Europe, then to Africa, then to Asia, one of the many botanical exchanges that reshaped global agriculture in the centuries after 1492. But something shifted in the transfer. European cooks, encountering varieties bred for sweeter, more substantial flesh, focused on that flesh. They baked it, they boiled it, they mashed it into soups and sweetened it into desserts. The seed, which had been the purpose for thousands of years, became the byproduct. The knowledge of what the seed contained, the minerals, the protein, the dense nutrition packed into each small oval shell, did not cross the ocean. Or if it did, it was not remembered. The seed did not fail. It was reclassified. In the agricultural systems that developed in Europe and later in North America, the parent plant became a crop grown for its flesh. The varieties that succeeded commercially were those that produced the largest, sweetest, most visually appealing fruits, whether for eating, for carving, or for processing into canned puree. The seeds were incidental. They were what you removed to get to the useful part. This reclassification was not based on nutritional analysis. 19th century food science was rudimentary, focused on macronutrients and calories, rather than the mineral profiles that would later reveal the seed's exceptional value. No one measured the magnesium content. No one compared it to almonds. The seed was simply not considered food, not by the commercial systems that determined what was grown, processed, and sold. Processing created additional barriers. Unlike almonds, which grow in orchards dedicated to their production, these seeds are embedded in a wet, fibrous matrix inside each fruit. Extracting them requires cutting open the fruit, scooping out the cavity, separating the seeds from the stringy pulp, washing them, drying them. At household scale, this is minor inconvenience. At industrial scale, it represents labor and infrastructure that commodity markets preferred to avoid. The almond industry, by contrast, developed specialized equipment for harvesting, hulling, and processing. Orchards were planted specifically for nut production. Marketing campaigns positioned almonds as a premium product, a health food, a sophisticated snack. The infrastructure of promotion and distribution that makes a food visible to consumers was built around almonds, not around a seed that emerged as waste from a different crop. The seeds, meanwhile, were composted, fed to livestock, discarded by the ton in processing facilities that wanted the flesh and nothing else. Some were pressed for oil, particularly in regions of Central Europe, where a hull-less variety made extraction easier. But this remained a minor use, invisible to global markets dominated by other cooking oils. By the 20th century, the seed had become a curiosity, something roasted at home after carving a jack-o'-lantern, a seasonal snack, consumed in small quantities once a year and forgotten until the next autumn. The nutritional density that had made it valuable for millennia was unmeasured, unpromoted, and unknown. The seed was not rejected because it was inadequate. It was rejected because it came attached to something else, and the systems that move food from field to consumer had already decided what that something else was for. When researchers finally measured what the seed contained, the results were striking. Magnesium concentrations approached 600 milligrams per 100 grams in dried seeds, among the highest of any commonly available food. This is not a marginal difference. It is roughly double the concentration found in almonds, which are themselves considered an excellent source. For a population widely deficient in magnesium, with consequences ranging from muscle cramps to poor sleep to cardiovascular strain, this density matters. Zinc content is similarly exceptional. The seed provides 8 to 10 milligrams per 100 grams, a concentration that rivals or exceeds dedicated supplements. Zinc deficiency affects immune function, hormone production, and tissue repair. It is endemic in diets built around refined grains and processed foods. The seed addresses this deficiency in a form the body recognizes: whole food, not isolated mineral. The protein content ranges from 25 to 30% by dry weight. The amino acid profile is complete, containing all essential amino acids in proportions that support human nutrition. This is unusual for a plant food. Most seeds and grains are limited in one or more amino acids, requiring combination with other protein sources. This seed stands closer to animal protein in its completeness. The fat profile is predominantly unsaturated, with meaningful amounts of omega-6 and omega-9 fatty acids. The seeds contain phytosterols, plant compounds that research associates with cholesterol regulation. They provide phosphorus for bone health, iron for oxygen transport, potassium for nerve function. And they contain tryptophan, an amino acid that serves as a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. Traditional use of the seeds for sleep and calm was not superstition, it was observation, validated centuries later by biochemistry. The parent plant, meanwhile, asks almost nothing of the soil. It grows in temperate climates across the world. It tolerates heat, moderate drought, and soils of middling fertility. It produces abundantly. A single plant can yield multiple large fruits, each containing several hundred seeds. It matures within a single growing season, from spring planting to autumn harvest, requiring no overwinter protection and no perennial maintenance. The seeds, once dried, store indefinitely. They do not require refrigeration. They do not spoil, do not lose nutritional value, do not demand the cold chains and controlled atmospheres that make other foods expensive to preserve. In a cellar, a closet, a jar on a shelf, they wait. Stable, dense, ready. For anyone concerned about food security, about nutrition without dependence on global supply chains, about growing and storing calories on a small plot of land, the seed offers something rare, exceptional nutrition from a plant that grows almost anywhere, producing a byproduct that most people already discard. The seed is called the pumpkin seed. In Spanish-speaking regions, it is known as pepita, the diminutive of pipa, meaning seed. In Central Europe, particularly in Austria and Slovenia, a hull-less variety has been cultivated for centuries, pressed into a dark, nutty oil that appears in traditional cuisine. In Mexico, ground seeds form the base of pipián, a sauce as old as the civilizations that first cultivated the plant. The parent plant is the pumpkin, though the term covers a range of related squashes, all producing edible seeds with similar nutritional profiles. The large orange fruits carved for Halloween, the sugar pumpkins processed for pie filling, the heirloom varieties grown by gardeners for flavor and beauty, all of them contain seeds. All of those seeds are edible. All of them are being thrown away. For those who wish to harvest them, the process is simple. Cut open the fruit. Scoop out the cavity. Separate the seeds from the fibrous pulp by hand or in a bowl of water, where the seeds sink and the fibers float. Rinse. Spread on a tray. Dry thoroughly. In the sun. In a low oven. In a dehydrator. Store in a sealed container. The hull can be eaten or removed. Hull-less varieties, sometimes labeled as Styrian pumpkins, produce seeds with no hard shell. Green, tender, ready to eat as soon as they are dried. Standard varieties have a white hull that is edible but fibrous. Many people prefer to crack it and remove the green kernel inside. Roasting is optional. Raw seeds retain more delicate nutrients. Light roasting develops flavor without damaging fats. Heavy roasting, at high temperatures for extended periods, degrades some of the compounds that make the seeds valuable. Traditional preparations often used low heat or simple sun drying. The seeds can be eaten whole, ground into flour, blended into butter, or pressed for oil. They appear in salads, in granola, in breads and muffins, in the same applications where almonds or sunflower seeds might be used. They are not exotic. They are not difficult. They are simply overlooked. Every autumn, millions of pumpkins are sold, carved, displayed, and discarded. The flesh rots on porches and in compost bins. The seeds go with it. Hundreds of seeds per fruit, each one containing more magnesium than an almond, more zinc than most foods in the modern diet, complete protein and stable fats in a package that stores for years. The knowledge was not lost. It was not hidden. It was simply set aside, season after season, by people who had forgotten what they were throwing away. The seeds are still there. inside every pumpkin, every winter squash, every ornamental gourd left to decay after the holidays, waiting to be remembered.